Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I love me some H.P. Lovecraft. I have been a fan of H.P. Lovecraft and his works since I was in high school. A friend of mine, Rob Mitchell, turned me on to his writing. And I read a little bit in high school, took a couple of classes on horror literature when I got to college. One of my teachers was the man who wrote the H.P. Lovecraft Companion, also president of the Baker Street Irregulars at the time. My literary agent is a scholar of Lovecraft, and I learned a lot through associating with her. And, of course, if you're a role-playing gamer and you're a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, sooner or later you're going to play Call of Cthulhu. I love Call of Cthulhu. I have played a number of different iterations of the game. And it is always an interesting experience. You can run Call of Cthulhu badly, but it's written so that you have a very distinct Lovecraftian feel if you follow the guidelines, if you follow how the rules and book are laid out. It's difficult to not have a proper Lovecraftian experience if you are playing it right. Sometimes atmosphere helps. I don't always think that lighting and sound and whatnot's important in a role-playing session. I like to draw people in with my voice as a game master, but Call of Cthulhu, sometimes you want the lights down a little bit lower. You want a couple of candles around. If you could play Call of Cthulhu on a stormy, windy night, clouds in the sky, rain pelting down, that would be the ideal place for it. And Cthulhu has gotten popular. He's plushy, he's toys, he's in comics, and I understand to some degree. I was fascinated by the image of Cthulhu, and reading the stories and how he was described to me. And the fast description doesn't do it justice. Cthulhu with the octopus on his head and bat wings. Except it's so much worse than that. The problem with Cthulhu being in the popular culture and him being so plushable and cartoony is that that's two things Cthulhu was never meant to be. Not even really supposed to pronounce his name. You're not even really supposed to be able to pronounce the name. It's not written for human tongues. And Cthulhu is just as close as we can get to it. If you understand the Lovecraft perspective on his Cthulhu mythos, you know these things aren't there to be relatable. In fact, they're quite the opposite. They're the furthest possible thing from relatable that you can possibly get. They're not existing in a form that humans can even fully comprehend or even begin to. That's why encountering the mythos tends to drive one insane. Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game, in any of its iterations, has one of the most complex and satisfying insanity systems that exist in role-playing games, period. And when you make up a character for Call of Cthulhu, it's not, I'm going to build up all these levels and I'm going to get super powerful and I'm going to go take these things on myself because I'm a super powerful character now. No, when you make a character in Call of Cthulhu, it's a race. It is a race to see whether you go insane or die. It is not impossible that this will be a tie. Your character is doomed. Your character should be doomed. Your character is dealing with things that man was not meant to deal with. And the greatest victory that you can expect in Call of Cthulhu is to make people aware that something needs to be done, even though there's nothing that you can really do. And that's kind of an oversimplification too. You're aware of this. Mankind doesn't matter. The earth is doomed. It's a tiny speck in a vast void that doesn't apply a tiny shred of importance to it. Do you let people know so that mankind can go insane together in their understanding of their lack of place and importance in the universe? Or, having seen these things, do you take that knowledge with you and allow mankind to continue in ignorance, blissfully unaware that the horrible, horrible end is all too close? Oh, it's a role-playing game, so you're going to go shoot shit and blow things up. And if in the course of that you gain some modicum of power, which is possible, that stops you from dying first, or holds off insanity for another moment, or hastens it, you've made a mark. I think that's it. I think that's what the ultimate goal is. You want to make a mark. You want the mythos to remember you. You want there to be at least one night gaunt out there with a notch on its ear that it's going to remember forever because it's damn immortal, that you're the one who put it there. Or you want to swim in the mythos. You want to get into it, become it for as long as you'll last, which won't be long. Cthulhu is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There's so much to it. That's this huge universe. Lovecraft started it and expanded it hugely, and his contemporaries, Robert Bloch and person who wrote Conan, Howard, expanded on it. And since then, both in the literature and the writing and the role-playing games have also, it's like what happened with D6 Star Wars. That so much extra material entered the Star Wars universe through the role-playing game that it started to seep out in the movies again. That the role-playing game has added so much depth and richness to the mythos that it has entered the zeitgeist, the popular conceptions of the mythos. I'm not here talking about the mythos strictly. I'm talking about playing Call of Cthulhu and running Call of Cthulhu. I have a number of Call of Cthulhu stories. This one, though, I'm going to start with the scariest one I've got. Because if you're talking Call of Cthulhu, there's got to be a scary story. Hand on my heart, hand in the air. This happened. This is a true story. Years ago, I am running the D20 version of Call of Cthulhu written by Monty Cook. I love that version. It simplifies a lot of the things that the Chaosium version just deliberately complicates, and has a smooth flow. The book was poorly bound and fell apart, but the material in it was so good. Good artwork, great writing. Well, it's Monty Cook. The system, the D20 system, flowed smoothly into it. You had options and chances. You're going to die or go insane, but... And modern day game, Call of Cthulhu gives you choices. Usually you're either in the 1800s or turn of the century. I like modern day games because I can place them in spots where I've been. and that helps me describe things. I put a lot of games in Los Angeles or in St. Louis or in places that I've driven through, been to, or visited because I like going places for these descriptions. I can paint pictures of what's there. In this particular adventure, the group is in St. Louis. They have they're paranormal investigators. We have a psychic and a military sniper and a couple of a bodyguard type private investigator. And they've become aware of the mythos, and they've become aware that there are things happening, and they're taking action. More to the point, they've become aware that certain earthly organizations are also aware of the mythos and are using it nefariously. They become aware of a military organization known as Delta Green. This is canon throughout most of the games. It's a military branch that acknowledges, fights, and utilizes elements of the mythos. They are not generally regarded as nice people. They can be. It depends on how you view them in your particular game or how you're running them in the society that your game is set in. They were dealing with things that they should not have been in this particular case. Delta Green had a barge that they were moving south on the Mississippi River, straight through St. Louis, heading towards the Delta, where they're going to deploy certain technologies and agents within the barge in the Atlantic Ocean through the Gulf of Mexico. And this was going to be disastrous. The party was aware of this. The party had gotten inside information, as it were. There was a psychic there that what was going to be deployed was not going to work the way Delta Green thought it was not going to work the way anyone thought it was, because it's stuff from the outside of reality. It's stuff from beyond the far stars. It's not going to behave the way humans think it is, ever. It's going to cause disasters and panic and mayhem and not pacify the oceans like Delta Green thought it would. They had to stop the barge. Stopping a barge on the Mississippi is not an easy thing to do. If it's not planning on stopping there in St. Louis, there's a facilities for barges in St. Louis. You certainly could stop one there. But if it's not planning on stopping, it's a major thoroughfare. It's going to go through. There's a lot of shipping still done on the Mississippi, surprisingly enough. So, how do you stop that? How do you stop a barge? The party was desperate, because this was going to be horrific, and desperate times call for desperate measures. So one rainy, windy Friday night, we're sitting in the room, and Dave, playing the sniper, starts analyzing the area. They all go around, investigate, see what's there that they can use before the barge gets there. And I describe something that I've seen personally many times. Not in St. Louis, but in East St. Louis, across the George Washington Bridge, just across the George Washington Bridge. Off the side to the north a little bit, there is a fueling station, 4 barges, lots of fuel tanks, and one major fuel pump valve. It's fairly close to the highway. It is covered in chains. It's like they keep putting low quality chains on it to lock it up and padlock it, and the chains will rust over time. It's St. Louis. You salt the roads, and snow and wind and rain and whatnot, and hot summers and humidity, the chains rust and partially rot away, and instead of ever taking a chain off of this thing when it was no longer useful, they just let it sit there, put another chain on, and refresh the padlock. And over the course of a decade or more, this thing was literally like piled in chains. This was as a result of a really good investigation role. They were looking for a weak point, and that's the closest thing that I could think of. You know, because the fuel tanks themselves, big, thick, hardy structures designed to take a bit of damage. You're in Tornado Alley to a certain degree. So, fuel pump. So Dave announces his character is going to climb up to a tall structure on the other side of the river. Well, the arch is right there, but you can't really get to the top of the arch. But there's a couple of tall parking structures and an old candy factory as it used to be. Not too far, where he could get a good sniper position. He's carrying a Barrett Light 50, Dave's weapon of choice when playing a sniper, and it certainly had the range. It's not a mile all the way across the river. Sighted in on the fuel pump, and I like to end games in a cliffhanger from time to time. Don't roll yet. We'll roll at the beginning of next week. First roll next week will be you shooting at that fuel pump. Everyone else is ready, prepped, you know, guns hot, and an enchanted dagger ready to charge. Because when that fuel pump goes up, it's going to spread fuel all over the river, and it's going to light, you know, ignited fuel. River traffic is going to stop, and they're going to work their way over to the barge and either scuttle it or dismantle what they've got on board, whatever they need to do. They need to get on that barge and stop it. We break for the week. Good plan in place. I've got a week as a game master now to think of exactly what's going to happen as a result of that shot, because Dave's going to make the roll. He's got lots of bonuses, and well, you plan for what happens if he misses. He's probably going to take another shot because that's a fuel pump. It's a static target. It's not going to dodge or anything like that. If he misses the first shot, he'll take a second. And the people in the fuel depot, if there's any at that time, because it's late at night, are going to duck and scatter if they see an explosive shell hit near the fuel pump. But it's going to go up. So I start designing the events, laying out exactly what that disaster is going to look like, because it's going to be horrible. I like taking bad situations and making them worse, because running across a bunch of stalled barges to get to the one you're after is a hard thing to do, especially in a D20 system, and you're not getting that much advancement. Your stats aren't that great to begin with usually. Having to do it while the river's on fire, and it's surrounded by panicking riverboatmen trying to either get their barges moved or parked or not burned to death. That's a great opportunity for adventure and danger and comedy all at the same time, if you like that kind of humor, which I do. Minuses and penalties and saving throws galore, and it's going to be, you know, lots of dice throwing around. It's going to be awesome. So I've got a week to think that over. Not every minute, but I take time here and there to look at the maps and think how it would go. I wake up a week later, that Friday morning. I'll tell you how long ago this was. I got to my computer and I opened up AOL because that was my window on the world. And there was a news story. The night before the next game, Thursday night, lightning struck a fuel pump at a fueling depot in East St. Louis. Yeah, it was that pump. That pump that I had seen, that I had described in that vivid detail, that exact thing, the target of the next roll in the game, had been struck by lightning, causing an explosion and a loss of fuel, and the Mississippi was on fire, halting boat traffic. So after a moment of stunned silence, I pulled up the group email list, linked to the news story, and the subject of the email was, "Dave, what did you do?" So it was the first roll of the game that night. But you have to think for a minute. Coincidence. Pure coincidence. It could not have been a more statistically improbable event, but lightning strikes happen, right? Call of Cthulhu is a game steeped in mysticism and magic, with a C and a K. You're focusing the attention of a group of people on events that haven't happened, that aren't going to happen, that are fictional, they couldn't possibly happen. And then you spend a week thinking about it. Oh, I assure you that over the course of that week, everyone else is readying their next action. What am I going to do? What am I going to do when that shot hits that fuel pump? What am I going to, once the shot hits, I'm going to disassemble the rifle and make my way down and vanish into the city so there's no chance of finding me. Once that shot hits, we're going to make our way from barge to barge. Once that shot hits, I'm going to sense the area with my psychic abilities and see if we're right about exactly which barge it's in and target the rest of the group. Once that pump gets hit, I run a lot of Call of Cthulhu. I've run Cthulhu before that, I've run Cthulhu after that, and I will continue to do so. The Eldritch Victory books, an homage to Call of Cthulhu and the works of Lovecraft. I've never had a prescient event like that happen again. And there's no way, no possible way the events are actually connected. It had to be a coincidence. That's the only rational explanation. But if you step outside of rationality for a moment, there's a question you have to ask yourself. Did we, as a group, in our investigations, because I'm random as heck, I didn't script that before I described it. They looked for things, I described things I'd seen. We got to that sideways. It happened. Did we, as a group, predict that event? Or did we as a group have some hand in causing that event? Is it weirder than sports fans thinking that their yelling and screaming in the stands or from home affects the chances of their team's victory? Or blowing on your dice? Or switching your dice out when this dice is rolling bad, or punishing your dice from time to time? I don't know. It's fun to think about. I just try not to describe real things in that much detail anymore, just in case. Thank you for following me on this particular story. I will do some more Call of Cthulhu in the future. I've got a couple of games and a character named Hugh that absolutely needs to be talked about. In the meantime, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. That's fine. Feedback is feedback. If you have any questions or would like to share some of your role-playing or even Call of Cthulhu adventures, leave me a comment, please. I love reading comments. You'll love leaving me one. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Hit subscribe and the little notification bell next to it so you get notified when these videos happen. I like getting subscriptions. It's one of the numbers that I check all the time. If you really dug the video, I invite you to follow me at my Patreon, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. And consider donating. Anything helps and helps me produce more videos and hopefully eventually videos in a higher quality. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.